Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon. That is Sonny Ship, and we're talking recruiting. Hope you're having a fantastic day or getting ready for the weekend, wherever you might be. And you're tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever that might be. Sonny, you got a little new setup. You said the office is still suffering from the Christmas decorations and everything, but man, I hope you're having a good start to your new year.
Yeah, man. How about you? LSU basketball, the men are 2-0 in SEC play. Who would have thought that? Baseball's right around the corner. Recruiting's just, chugging along. And if you're an LSU fan, you got to be sky high right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, we didn't even throw in the fact that Nick Saban retires from Alabama, which is just all across the SEC. Fans throwing
Yeah, huh?
fanfare everywhere. I mean, it's been one of the busier weeks we've seen at this time of the year. But man, it's a lot of fun to talk about it. And one of the biggest things, Sonny, is kind of this recent run of commits. I know you've talked about this, on our board, on our site over at Go 24/7. But man, how impressed now, kind of looking. And I'm not saying it's necessarily over right now, but this little run that we thought they would go on, and you could go all the way back to Keelan Moses, announcing his commitment to the most recent one of Bryce Underwood. How impressed are you with the way the staff has kind of kicked off the new year per se for the 2025 class, and then just in general, when you reflect, how important is this for just the kind of development with everything going on in the SEC for LSU to kind of continue to stack this class?
Yeah, and everybody's still talking about Harlem Berry and Bryce Underwood, the two 5 stars for the 2025 class. Deservedly so. Number one quarterback, number one running back in the country, on some rankings. But it started with Dominic McKinley. You go back
Yeah.
to that big 5-star flip on New Year's when the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve. Or I think it was 11 o'clock Central Time, midnight down in Orlando. But that's where it started. And you kind of sat back and you kind of said, man, it's kind of weird, for Dominic McKinley to jump on board. You don't have a defensive line coach. It looked like things were progressing with Bo Davis. It looked like they hit a snag, and then all of a sudden they just went into overdrive. It takes me back to one of the first things that I wrote about Davis, that why it would make sense. And all of a sudden now you kind of start to see it all come I guess full circle, with
Mm.
this weekend being the weekend that Dominic McKinley is going to make, the 5-star D tackle out of Lafayette's going to make his official visit to LSU this weekend. And so, just when you go back to that, then you go to Berry, you go to Underwood, you look at the 2025 class as a whole, and then you look at the holes on the 2024 roster at defensive tackle. LSU could certainly use a cornerback like Terry Bussey, who's still out there and hasn't signed
Mhm.
yet. Is going to sign on National Signing Day. So just to see all of that kind of just be here and be something that that LSU fans are just so pumped up over and stuff. It's an unprecedented run in recruiting that I haven't seen in quite some time. Maybe ever, when you go back and you look at it. And so just for all of that stuff to one, to happen, and then two, you start, I think you're going to see some trickle down effects as a result of it. Obviously, hoping to start this weekend with getting McKinley on campus, him and Bo Davis getting together, and then being able to kind of start to build on that relationship. That I think it's conceivable to say that he probably had a better relationship with Bo Davis than he had with LSU's own defensive line coach, Jimmy Lindsey, just due to the
Yeah.
circumstances surrounding that and all.
Yeah, I mean, look, this run of recruiting, I mean, you start to kind of look at the star ratings, the star power. One thing that I kind of hit on, Sonny, when, Glenn and I talked about this when Bryce Underwood committed, one of the biggest stories that they were not talking about enough of is, you correct me if I'm wrong, but when you bring in kind of that trio of Barry, DeCorian Moore, and Underwood, one of the big calling cards is you can really pitch to keep them on board, even as other teams are going to continue to recruit them, mainly because, hey, you can come play with the number one running back in the country. You can come play with the number one quarterback in the country. I think, and this, I know that age of NIL, I know that DeCorian Moore is one of the top players in the country, top player in the state of Texas. The pitch just got a little bit easier for LSU because now you've got the number one quarterback. Your thoughts, as you and I've discussed many times, of the the trying to keep him in the fold, maybe just got a little bit easier.
Yeah, and it got a little bit easier because, like you said, you always hear iron sharpens iron. Well, iron likes to play with iron a lot too, and so I think you can, I think once you start to assemble this group, they build that camaraderie, they build those relationships. That's going to help when Texas, when other schools come in and saying, okay, what's LSU presenting to you as potential NIL opportunities?
Mm,
Here's what we can do. Well, all of a sudden, if they come in and if they top you, by a considerable amount, well, now, you know, even if you can't top that amount, you have some things working in your favor in those relationships. Um, Obviously, one domino falls, then you kind of start to, then that may not be as big of a factor. But I think, if you're LSU, you couldn't ask for a better situation because you're going to have to deal with all the NIL stuff somewhere down the road. You're going to have to deal with Texas come in, throwing a big bunch of money in Texas A&M or whatever, presenting some good opportunities, some good deals for Decory and more that may be better than what has
yeah.
presented right now. We see that all the time. Then it just becomes a bargaining process, and we see it all. It happens all the time. But if you have some extraneous, some things on the outside that are on your side that can help you in other areas, then that's just a huge plus. And I think that's what LSU has right now in having those players on board. Then you start adding some more big pieces. You start adding some more big pieces, and you just kind of build on that. I think
Hmm.
one of the things that we don't want to lose in translation, and we don't want to lose in our thought, is that when you sign, if you sign the number one quarterback, the number one running back, the number one receiver, let's just say you toss in a number two or number three safety, a number two or number three jack, and you start really building out that class, you also have to come through on the other end of the opportunities and everything that you presented. And so when you get a
Hmm.
group of guys like that together, I think it can present some NIL challenges because, you know, there are some schools out there who may just have endless amount of funds, which I really don't think there is one out there. It just may seem like they have an endless amount
Yeah.
of funds, but being able to afford a group of five stars and a group of prospects like that will present some challenges that LSU will have to deal with down the road. But just when you look at the recruiting perspective, you look at just going out and just saying, hey, these kids want to come to LSU. Our coaches got out there, recruited them, busted their butts from relationships. We got them on campus. We showed them a great time. They saw the atmosphere in Tiger Stadium. They saw what Death Valley was all about. When you put all of that stuff in there, that's a lot. That's a lot that you have working in your favor if it ever does come into an NIL ballgame.
And look, honestly, I mean, you talk about this. These are the type of situations you want to find yourself in. You want to have the problem of saying, "Hey, do we
Yeah,
have enough NIL funds?" And then turning around to
right.
said collectives and saying, "Hey, we need a little bit more so we
You
can
want to have
have
to
that
dig in those
roster
coffers. You want
intact."
to say, like, look, we did our part. We did our
Yeah.
part.
Now it's time for
You
the
know?
collectives to
Yeah,
pony
yeah.
up.
No, let's see.
You know,
Let's see them bankers come into play.
You mentioned Dominic McKinley, and obviously LSU with a visit weekend here. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, this weekend recruiting is going to ramp up really here. The coaches get to kind of, be a part of this and correct me if I'm wrong, Sonny, for this period all throughout January, and then February 3rd, 4th, or 5th, one of those days is kind of when that dead period hits in. How important is the month of January when you've looked back at how LSU has done, in previous classes, and then just kind of getting McKinley? I know we have some other guys going to be there as well. But your thoughts on this weekend?
Well, it's big on, obviously you want to get McKinley on campus. You want to reinforce everything that made him commit to you in the first place. You want to dot your I's and cross your T's and and do everything that you can to make sure that, a Tennessee, a Texas, someone like that doesn't,
Hmm.
pop up and convince him, to, hey, just come on up and just take a weekend getaway. We won't even really recruit you while you're here. We'll just let you party and stuff, anything to get him on campus.
Yeah.
And so you want to just reinforce everything to where it's like, look, now, if this comes up, let's not go there. Let's not do this. And,
Hmm.
but I think for the month of January, obviously in Terry Bussey, you're still
Yeah.
recruiting Terry Bussey. You're going to have the Liberty wide receiver. You can throw his name out there because it's a
CJ
safety right
Daniels.
now, right?
Yeah.
Who's also supposed to be on campus Friday, right?
Yeah,
And then
today.
going to Miami on Saturday.
That's the plan. Yeah.
So that's another big one. That's another big one when you look at the 2024 at the transfer portal needs that you're still trying to address. But looking ahead, January 27th is going to be a big weekend on the LSU campus. There's going to be a lot of guys coming in for unofficial visits from the 2025 class. And I think that's what the month of January is going to be more important towards building those relationships with these out of state kids while the coaches have a couple of weeks that they can get out, on the road, and being able to just kind of set yourself up for, the spring visit period that has become so critical. The spring visit period, is probably outside of the, I'd say the summer visit period is probably the most important just because so many visits happen. But the spring
Yeah.
visit period is probably ahead of the fall visit period when you talk in terms of, what you can really get accomplished and what you
Mm.
hope to get accomplished.
Yeah, you talk about, wanting to get these things accomplished, kind of cinching down with McKinley. I thought you mentioned it right there. It's so important because look, yeah, you got the the clock struck midnight. You got the commitment, you got the graphic, all that stuff looks really good. But now you kind of get him on campus where, that's been one of the things where I think this staff feels comfortable after they can get a kid on campus about their chances. It says a lot about, the 2025 kids, but with a kid like McKinley, and then we kind of looked into the future with Terry Bussey. I mean, I mentioned it on the show in Baton Rouge. I said, hey, I feel like McKinley's the more likelier option. When you look at Terry Bussey, I mean, how how desperate, and I think that's an interesting word to use, but how desperate do you think the staff is to really kind of hone in on Bussey as he gets closer to signing?
Well, I don't think I don't think there's any question that he would, that give you a lot of momentum and just really give you, if you look at the cornerback room right now, you've got, I want to say 10 guys in that room, if I'm not
Mm,
mistaken. That also includes nickels and stuff too. But you've got some numbers there that don't say, "Hey, we need another guy." However, when
yeah,
you look at those numbers and when you look at production, you say, "We need another guy who can come in and who can play for us immediately." Terry
mm,
Bussey, obviously being a 5 star, there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of talk around around that 5 star. But he got that because of the athleticism that he has, because of the playmaking ability that he has shown on offense. Shown some on defense, but that's where a lot of people think that just his stock is really going to soar at, and so he's one of those types of players that you look at as an impact player. If you don't get a Terry Bussey, the good thing is that you still have the spring, you still have the second portal window that opens April 1st and runs
yeah,
through April 15th. But you've got this transfer portal window that's open in Tuscaloosa right now for about the next, 26 days, 27,
yeah.
28 days. What happens if, you could have a domino effect? I mean, you could have an effect to where, and let's just say Mike Norvell or Lane Kiffin take the Alabama job. But then guess what? Those
Florida
transfer
State
portal
opens. Ole
windows are
Miss
going to
opens.
open at that school for 30 days. And so I have a feeling that we're going to see a domino effect come into play. It
Mm,
started with Alabama. Now, who takes that job? Then who takes that
yeah.
job? Then who takes that job? Man, you could potentially looking at a transfer portal window that could be open just from coaches still in April. you know,
Oh
so
yeah.
so my point is even if you don't get a Terry Bussey on National Signing Day, you're going to have some opportunities to go out there and to woo those corners who will be looking, who played at these schools, who showed they could play at these schools, but are who looking for a fresh start. And when you call yourself DBU, that's a pretty good selling point, and that's a pretty good, I guess, catchphrase to grab someone's attention.
I wanted to ask this, too. You talk about DBU, getting back to that. I mean, look, obviously it's been obviously public here for a while. Blake Baker, Bo Davis, we've kind of mentioned already. You're still waiting on that DB coach domino to fall. How important from people you've talked to has been the hire of Blake Baker? And we've talked to some of the kids. Like, What type of effect do you think that has on recruiting? Because this is a guy who understands the state of Louisiana, has spent some time here, good relationship with Joe Sloan. It seems like a match made in heaven, obviously, for the on the field product, but recruiting wise, I mean, we've heard nothing but good things from some players about, hey, he recruited me when, they wanted to offer me at Missouri. Is it a positive effect? Is the arrow pointing up for LSU recruiting continuing with these new guys in the influx of the staff?
Oh, I think so. I think so, definitely. I mean, I think if you look at, just look at the coaches you replace. Matt House with Blake Baker. I mean,
Mm,
that's a 180 as far as recruiting goes. When you look at, when you talk to coaches who have seen Blake Baker, who have met him, who have dealt with him recruiting the state of Louisiana from his time at Tech, from his time at LSU, just glowing reviews, just really strong reviews. And your coordinators are typically not going to be your guys who are out there hounding the streets and who are out there just,
yeah,
kissing babies and shaking hands, and they're more of the deal closers. But I think Blake Baker's gonna give you more of that, a lot more of that than you got with Matt House. I think he's going to, just by his nature, by his personality, that he just, he's the type of guy who likes recruiting. He likes those
yeah,
relationships and building those relationships. And then when it comes to Bo Davis, Bo Davis is a name that, when you mention, a defensive lineman and you mentioned the name Bo Davis, kids start doing this. Where's he at? They know that name. They know
mm,
that name. They've heard that name. They've seen that name enough, that even if they don't know him, they've heard that he's one of the best D-line coaches out there. So I think that's another name, especially in Louisiana, because Davis recruited Louisiana when he was at Alabama. He helped recruit Louisiana. Had a strong footing up in Monroe with when Cam Robinson came out and all those guys. Obviously when he was at Texas too. So he's going to be a guy that when you say that name as to a defensive lineman, they're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. Yeah,
mm.
and so from the standpoint of who you replaced already, I mean, if you're an LSU fan, I mean, stock way up in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Without speaking ill of the previous coaching staff, it sounds like to me, just from reading through the tea leaves, Blake Baker's a guy that's maybe built more for the current college game in terms of relationships, recruiting than maybe Matt House was, and I think that's going to help. Obviously, not only with prospective recruits, but also guys currently in the building as well. Wanted to get this last part, and we kind of mentioned it here a little bit, but the massive domino effect. We had Brad Crawford on the podcast yesterday, national SEC writer for 24/7 Sports, and he mentioned and alluded to kind of what you talked about. If you hadn't caught that episode, just scroll up on your feed. This domino effect is probably going to be unlike anything we've ever seen because, like you mentioned, whoever takes the Alabama job, it's going to open there. That person where their school is, then that place is going to have to be filled. Where really, truthfully, you could see you're going to have 2 or 3 schools open when that next portal opens, window opens in April. Does LSU's roster strictly benefit though from Nick Saban's retirement at Alabama? I mean, Sonny, to me, it depends on who they hire. Honestly, I don't know if there's going to be as much of a mass exodus as maybe people think. Now, the longer this thing goes on, we're going to have to see. Is there anybody on that roster that you're looking at that you think the staff is sitting there saying to themselves, "Hey, we might have a chance to go poach some guys if the timing's right."
Yeah, I think so. And I think you start looking at obviously the positions of need that you have for LSU. In my opinion, defensive tackle,
Yeah.
cornerback. I mean, in a perfect world, you'd love to be able to get you'd love to be able to get a wide receiver in here who could, really have a chance to push for that wide receiver one label.
Hmm.
Obviously cornerback, like we mentioned. And so I think that you look at those rosters and in the day and age of recruiting that we're in now, you start going down and you say, okay, this guy right here. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. I remember LSU finished like second or third for this dude right here.
Yeah.
Then you start looking for some instances like that. You start looking for some situations to where coaches built relationships with them. Let's
Mm.
say, let's say LSU named Corey Raymond the cornerback coach. Okay, you start looking at guys like, okay, well, this guy on the Alabama roster, Corey Raymond recruited him and had Florida finishing second for him. So you start doing some, you start trying to connect some dots like that for some opportunities. And same thing with Bo Davis. When you look at the defensive line right now, you start looking at okay, what portal guys was he recruiting for Texas? What portal guys did he maybe get in with? Who did he kind of finish second or third with from this, the last couple of recruiting cycles and stuff? And so, I think that's where you start, because used to be in G Dub mentioned Brick Haley's name on the board and kind of got ripped a little bit upside down. Took it all in good faith, and the board had a little fun with him. But Brick Haley was famous for being second when he was coaching at LSU, famous for being
Yeah.
second in recruiting, on the LSU message boards, talk radio shows. Well, finishing second now actually puts you're probably a coin flip away. That's your odds of recruiting this kid again in a year or two in today's climate, 3 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so those close battles are battles that you go back and you look for, I think, on rosters, to where, it starts with Alabama roster, but then, who comes over from, who takes that within that one and stuff. And then you start, and so when you look at those situations, well, you think of, okay, if each roster has 85 and say we see 3 or 4 of these ripple down effects, that's about 320 players right there. I would think that there's some decent odds that there's a couple of players out of that pool that you could really, have a chance with.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to say
Granted, that
this.
includes a lot of tampering, but hey, there is no tampering
Yeah.
in college football, right?
Well, and I'll even add this, Sonny. I mean, we talk about the idea of tampering. I'm telling you right now, if you don't think that staffs across the country have interns, grad assistants that are scouting when you play somebody and say, "Hey, I really like that kid. Hey, number 20 on that that cornerback, he played against our number 2 receiver really well. If he's interested, let's make sure we pounce on him during the season." It is what it is. I mean, scouting
Yeah.
departments in college football have grown so tremendously. It just is what it is. And I agree
Well,
with you
look,
there. I mean,
yeah,
look, finishing second is almost as good as finishing first nowadays with how
and
much these kids go through the portal.
right, no doubt, no doubt. And the whole thing about tampering too is that, look, if you actually tamper with the kid, you're an idiot and you deserve to be fired and get a 2-year
Yeah.
show clause, 3-year show clause, whatever, because you're an absolute moron. Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, there are so many easy ways to get around it. I coach for Kalamazoo University. Okay. There's a kid I like at Western Kentucky or somewhere like that, And so it's so easy to say, hey, coach, if Johnny Boy ever gets in the transfer portal, we got a spot for him. Tell his high school coach that. You're not recruiting
Yeah.
the kid. All you're doing is talking to a relationship that you have. But guess what? High school coach can tell Johnny Boy that. Johnny Boy, then he can make that call right there. And that's how easy it is.
Mhm.
And so the notion of a college coach getting caught sliding in a kid's Twitter or X DMs or whatever, if someone gets caught doing that, then they deserve to lose that job that they have right there, because there's so many ways to get around that, so many
Yeah.
ways.
One of the schools that was just kind of caught in this is Florida State, which obviously has been in the news, a lot lately. What your thoughts on that? I don't know if you've seen the kind of the whole document or anything, but it was between a transfer that they wanted and a booster. I mean, I don't know, Sonny. Like you just said, it seems like it's pretty cut and dry how to get around this stuff. It's
Yeah.
almost laughable when they do get caught because it's so easy to find a loophole.
Why is the booster involved? Does the booster
Yeah.
not? I mean, is there not a collective? I mean, the NCAA basically set it up now to where boosters, all you have to do is funnel your money into this collective, and the collective can do all the work for you. I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty cut and dry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why does this booster, unless this booster just has an ego out of this world, this booster should not want to get on the phone with anybody.
Yeah.
you know should not want to contact anyone. That's what I don't understand. I mean, there is such a blueprint, but whoever this booster is probably his ego is so far out of bounds that he can't
Mhm.
keep it in check to begin with, and he wants to he wanted a little bit of fame. Well, he got his fame.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I'm reading it right here. It says during the contact period, this booster encouraged the prospect to enroll at Florida State and then offered in person a name, image, likeness deal as a recruiting inducement. I mean, you can't. I don't know, man. I mean, I get it like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Okay, like that makes sense. But with the way they've just blown the doors off this thing to there's no rules and you find a way to break one of these crazy rules that you have to flip through the handbook and find, I don't know. That's pretty pitiful.
can you imagine the dude on the at the NCAA when this came across his desk? He's like,
Wait, what?
"Is this a joke? You mean I actually get to prosecute somebody?" I mean, it's just unfathomable, that some of the levels of ignorance that we see, just in society in general.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother podcast. That's when we started our politics and society podcast.
Yeah, that's when Sonny becomes a guest teacher at LSU's
We're going to
campus,
stick
I
to
guess. Yeah.
football on this one.
Yeah. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But it all does kind of tie into the fact that this portal is going to be open. I think Sonny personally, and we're starting to see this across college football, every single new year, every single new cycle brings new things that we thought we would never see before. And so maybe we just shouldn't be surprised at this point. But with Nick Saban obviously retiring, I think it's going to be crazy to see schools potentially like a Washington and Ole Miss, Florida State, with a portal window open, and even further down the line when spring practice ends. I mean,
That's
could you
but
imagine conducting spring practice with a portal open?
that's what I was going to say, and it's going to happen. It's going to
Yeah.
happen because look at we're at 112. We're at January 12th right now. Okay,
Yep.
I think the 30-day window for Bama started on the 10th, or was it the 9th?
I believe it was the day. I believe it was the 10th. I believe it was the
Okay.
10th. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So now you're going to February 9th. You're already going to February 9th. Well, let's say that they name a head coach in 2 days. And then so now you're looking at January 14th. Now that school starts to get lined up. There will be a school stuck with having to do spring football, with having a portal window open.
that's a
You
nightmare.
you get the feeling that there's going to be a school out there involved in this domino effect of this coaching search that will be
Yeah.
going through spring practice with the portal window open.
And I'll add this too, and this is far off the title of this YouTube video, but I'll even add this into it. It's probably going to be a school that can least afford it. And I mean it as a lower level Power Five program or Group of Five program that sees their coach jump up to fill one of the vacancies in this rungs of a ladder. And you're talking about a program that, enters the month of January feeling like, okay, we were able to weather the storm that was the early portion of the portal and then has to weather a whole nother storm that's really never going to end. And I'll tell you this too, it's only going to increase the gap between the haves and the haves nots of college football. That's just my opinion. You're going to have teams that just continue to get pushed down towards the bottom. And I know, look, we got a lot of LSU fans that watch this, and look, LSU is one of those brands that's going to stay at the top no matter what. It's not good for college football. I've been around programs that have kind of been in that position, and that's not fun for the sport that we all kind of grew up and loved. But hey, that's a whole nother episode, man. Sonny, at some point they got to get us on the radio. I mean, just a 2 hour, 3 hour time slot, and you and I just chop it up for 2.5 hours and bring and maybe we even open the phone lines. That would be interesting.
Yeah, we would have to incorporate some spirits and into that.
Yes, that would be quite the
We would have to
experience.
incorporate some
Sure.
spirits and bartenders and
But hey, it's a good conversation. Recruiting for LSU right now, like we mentioned to open up the podcast, at an all-time high. Sonny mentioned it's probably from a numbers standpoint and a rating standpoint, something we haven't seen. And man, that's exciting. It's a great time to be an LSU fan. It's a great time for also you to join. You can sign up now for that 60% off annual VIP membership. I was looking at it. It's
it's only a couple more
42.96.
days too.
Yeah, only a
It's
couple more days.
actually going to end. Yeah.
42.96 for the year. That comes out to $3.58 a month. Look, I know you got your New Year's resolution. You're trying to budget, but man, make us a part of your budget. Great community over there, and we would love to have you join. You can click the link down below, whether you're watching this or listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcast. He is Sonny Ship. My name's Bryce Koon, and we will catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.